Well, hello everybody. It's a new year, a new start, 2023. Happy New Year if you're listening to this as I've recently recorded it, or if you're catching up on it a lot later. I hope 2023 is working out for you. I wanted to do a short thought piece really on some of the messages that I've been considering in the last few weeks as I've had time off, and I've been obviously resting, catching up, watching some TV, some online stuff. And what seemed to be the theme with a lot of the stuff that I was coming across was the idea of the importance of hope. And in fact, I've done a short presentation on that, which I'll link in below in the description. Now, New Year's are traditionally related to resolutions, perhaps the idea that you can make a new start and resolve to improve things. So I think hope is in the air with any new year. But of course, 2022 and the years prior to that have been extremely challenging and continue to be extremely challenging for large numbers of people, not just from the point of view of their health, but also the economy, which certainly in the UK, but I know elsewhere has been really struggling. It's a global phenomenon. And we are faced with perhaps a lot of fear that we don't normally experience because we're afraid of the future, our futures, our families' futures, perhaps the future of our country or our nation or even our world. And so it's easy to fall into fear because those messages are everywhere. Whereas the messages of hope are very difficult to find. However, over Christmas, there was an amazing program which I watched based on a best-selling book called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse, which apparently is an internet phenomenon because the author, illustrator, he's an artist, Charlie Mackesy, created it in lockdown, so nearly 3 years ago now. And apparently he started releasing some of the pictures he was drawing for this narrative, this idea he had, on Instagram. And he started getting more and more followers, as you do, if you chime with something that people need. So it seems that the message of the book, and certainly the animation, which I highly recommend, is one of courage and hope and friendship and self-love and self-care. And I was watching it, expecting it to be a children's program, really, because it was kind of billed that way, but it turned out to have messages for adults, huge messages, actually. And in one part, I was almost convinced he's borrowing my lines, and I've been in touch. I've actually emailed on his website to say, you're borrowing my best lines, because there were some things that were said by the characters in the story that resonate with me and with the clients that I work with. The importance of kindness, for instance, is such an important thing, to be kind to people, even if you disagree. I've talked about that before. To have courage, even in the face of the unknown, and ultimately to learn that home is wherever your heart is, not a physical place. It's basically where you feel a sense of belonging. And that's how the story kind of ends. And I was very interested to kind of think about the characters, because obviously there are four main characters. The boy, who's the initial character that you meet, and then in order of their appearance, the mole, who seems to be motivated by greed, really. All he wants is cake, but learns that he can defer gratification, which of course is a psychological phenomenon that children learn as they grow up, that they can delay gratification, immediate gratification, for something better further on. And it's an important lesson. And the fox, who we meet as a cunning hunter, vicious hunter, but is actually very withdrawn from life and wants, actually, like all of us, to be loved and feel like somebody cares, and gradually comes back to join the group. So that's another aspect perhaps of the personality of all of us. And then there's the horse who we meet finally, who appears to embody intuition, all knowing, and wisdom. And so I think it's no surprise that we meet those three characters in order of perhaps our human development. You know, as children, we're extremely greedy. We're very about us, you know, narcissistic. We all want mine, what's mine, and to keep hold of that. And perhaps as we grow older, we learn that we have agency, that we can change things, that we can maybe achieve our goals, but that there is a certain amount of disconnect or isolation that can come about because of that. Certainly in my own life, you know, the chasing after exam grades was a good example. You know, in order to do that, I had to disconnect from the things I loved to focus on getting the grades. And sometimes that isolated me from my peers because they didn't want to do that, or they hadn't chosen that, or they weren't very good at it. And because it's not right for everyone, you know, that I would have to survive alone with that skill set. So that's the fox, I guess. And then as I've got older and begun to trust myself a little bit more and to listen to my inner voice, then I'm perhaps relying more on my sense of inner knowing, which is not about cerebral knowing. It's not the same as knowing facts. It's not the same as knowledge. Actually, knowledge is acquired through a lifetime, but wisdom is about knowledge applied and about what you do with the knowledge you have. And kindness is such a big factor in making that work for everyone. And we see all over the internet examples of people being very unkind, actually, because they can do that in the shadow of being anonymous. They're not required to face the consequences of their unkindness. And so we see a lot of shaming going on. I think if people were allowed to have to own up to, you know, who they were and saying whatever they're saying to people face to face, we'd have a very different example to follow. And most people are not as vicious in person as they can be when they're anonymous and it's online. So I really enjoyed this series, which I think, you know, the film is wonderful. The book, of course, is a slower take on the same themes: courage, kindness, friendship, the importance of hope. And what I'm aiming to do for 2023 is to kind of spread that idea a little bit more, because hope is actually a very renewing emotion. It actually helps to regulate our brains as an antidote to fear. So it does that very interestingly through a part of the cortex called the prefrontal cortex. In fact, the right orbital prefrontal cortex. You don't need to know that, but it's a part of our brain that lies just behind the eyes, hence orbital, the orbits are the eyes. And it helps to oversee our concept of reality. So what we conceive of as real, as what is happening in the world. And if we don't have hope, we actually defer to more primitive parts of our brain, which are the limbic centers, particularly amygdala, which is our fear center, and some of the memories of past events in the hippocampal area. And we are triggered constantly to feel more and more anxiety because our brain is replaying what it believes is reality, but is actually based on past experience being replayed as if it was real, because you've got no inhibition from your cortical structures, the prefrontal cortex, which, as I said, inhibits the more primitive fear-based responses. So hope is not just a feeling, it's a source of information as far as the body is concerned, because all emotions have resonance. They have a vibration. You can't measure it normally through your senses, but there are ways of measuring resonance within the body. We typically measure brain waves, and we can also measure heart waves. But it's possible to also measure emotional changes in the body. So when we feel an emotion, it's not just a mental construct. It actually has a a source of information for the rest of the body and can change you at a cellular level. So hence, emotions that are renewing are high vibration, and they have transformative qualities. So they can change you at a cellular level, change you physiologically. Things like hope, gratitude, appreciation, friendship, joy. These were the emotions actually triggered by the book and by the film. And I think that's why it's actually been very, very successful, because people want to feel renewing emotions. They want to have a positive expectation of the future, because then we are actually able to change something. We are able to have agency in our lives and create the life we want, and be part of a community of people working towards a better future. And so these renewing emotions are both personal and help us to integrate our experience and make our bodies in harmony with our mind, but they also help us connect with others interpersonally and create change. So evoking hope, which I aim to do by showing you that everything is perception and you can change your perception of what's going on. You could say, for instance, the moment we're in right now is awful, catastrophic, desperate, and we're all, going to die, which we are anyway, but we're going to die sooner rather than later, because, our earth is toxic and polluted and crippled. Or we could say that we're at a crossroads in our evolution where we're actually going to create something much, much better and wake up effectively to what we're doing and find new solutions, which I do believe human beings are ultimately capable of, particularly when they are integrated in their own bodies. It's very difficult for people who are dysregulated autonomically, where your autonomic nervous system is not harmonizing your head and your heart, for instance. It's very hard for people who feel that way to create good environments, and often we find that their relationships are disrupted, their achievements are disrupted. So we need to first of all start with us and find ways to harmonize. And certainly, meditation is a good way. Visually, I find for me works better. So I draw. I'm going to show you one actually here. I've got one here, as they say, in all the best children's TV programs. Here's one I did earlier. This is a sacred geometry piece. It's constructed from a very simple shape, which you use as a template, and that's drawn from a series of harmonious circles, all based on natural order, proportion. So actually in drawing that, you come into a harmonious state yourself, because the visual cortex is feeding back information of harmony into your brain, and thus through the autonomics down to the rest of you. So there are many ways of coming into harmony. Walking in nature is another one, because you are perceiving the harmonics of nature. Trees, for instance, are, the way they branch has a proportional structure and a number sequence, which is fractal, without getting into the deeper mathematics. But these are simple ways in which we can feel in harmony. And that is so key. And I think art can do that, which is another reason why I think Charlie Mackessy's pictures, the ones he illustrates the book with, are so phenomenal. They're beautifully drawn. The simplicity of the lines is really amazing to evoke feelings. So I would very much ask people to take care of themselves this year, to pay attention to the emotional states they're in, and to try the hardest they can to come out of fear. So getting into a sense of connection with other people who speak this language of hope and courage and friendship and kindness, and move away from anything that feels dysregulated, vicious, nasty, just unkind, because it doesn't help us. We can't fight fire with fire in this case. We have to literally douse the flames. So anyway, those were my thoughts. I will put the links in the description to anything that I've referenced here. But just to pick up on the point finally, that we're all made of parts. We all have parts of us that maybe want to be unkind, but we have to take control and learn to integrate our experience in order to calm that all down. And that's how I work with people. And that's what I do for people, is get them into a state of harmony and high frequency, a resonant state. And once that happens, healing can happen, and it happens quite quickly, actually. So wishing you a very happy new year. And as I've said, if you're catching up on this later, I wish you all good things. Take care. Bye for now.